So why don't we start with Patti? If you want to introduce yourself, your company, your role there, and also talk a little bit, very briefly, about some of the core digital transformation projects that your team is currently engaged in.
Okay, thanks. I'm Patti Creed. I work for MCAP. At MCAP, we originate, securitize, trade, and service mortgages. We have about 700 employees across Canada, 65 billion in assets under admin and continuing to grow. And we service about 190,000 borrowers today. Our IT team is approximately 90 people. We do our own data center management in-house, as well as all of our application development. Right now, we're running about 5 large Agile projects that consist of borrower portal, lender portal, so really trying to expose our core applications out to our customer base. I have the overall responsibility of the application and development team there, and we work hard in collaboration with our business teams to create strategic value for MCAP and their customers.
Excellent. Move over to you, Brian.
Hi, my name is Brian Turpin. I'm the VP of IT at Greenwin, Inc. We are a property management and real estate company, family-owned in Ontario and Canada. I've been there about 5 years now, and I've been literally sprinting the marathon on getting a company and an industry that is behind the times in paper processing and very manual work, and moving that towards the new era, digital transformation, automation, workflow. We're doing everything from automated POs. If you're an employee, the moment you go into our build, the moment you're hired at Greenwin, you're in an automatic electronic workflow, no more manual fill out paper with taxes. Our whole onboarding process has gone digital from a tenant perspective, mobile payments, online leasing, online real-time communications. We continue to evolve that aspect. And then from our building side, we are looking at smart buildings now, and that's where our world of IT is exploding, taking what we're seeing on the consumer level and bringing it to an enterprise level.
Thank you. That's fantastic. So very different industries. So we've got financial services, real estate.
I think we're actually a customer. So.
Oh, fantastic.
There you go. Bill, over to you.
I'm with IDC. My background is I started out in telecom, moved into data networking, and actually had my first stint as an analyst at Gartner Group in the mid to late 90s, about 5 years. It was right at the peak of what IDC calls the second platform. It was an exciting time to be there. I've been with IDC now about 5 years, and I guess if I said it in a way of introduction, I continue to get involved. I have personally interviewed and connected with hundreds of CIOs. And I think that's the perspective that Lars wanted me to share today. But there are some people that are really doing great. We call them thrivers, and I'd like to share that kind of insight. Mm-hmm. But I will say, in terms of your own personal story, that I think is very important, is all the rules of the game have changed in IT. It is no longer the same world that we have been living in. And we need to understand the new rules in order to play. And that's the characteristic of the thriving IT organizations that I see.
Thank you, Bill. And Bill will be speaking tomorrow morning. So you'll have lots of opportunity to hear his perspective, and he'll be available throughout the conference for individual meetings as well. Before any questions at this point? Otherwise, I'll launch in here. Okay, so we've talked about digital transformation. Tony talked about different types of digital transformation, whether it's leadership, omni-channel, operational issues, employees. And then we heard from Jonathan here, who talked about digital transformation as we talk about mobility, the desktop, extending out to new endpoints, and how do we manage that, and the unified endpoint management system. So I'd like to hear from, maybe we could start with you, Brian. So from your point of view, as we talk about IT strategies and digital transformation in your industry and your experience, what do you view as the most critical IT strategy to get a handle on, and where are you focused right now?
For me, tech is the easy part. I can scale with the cloud, I can deploy mobile, I can wrap security around anything, or for most things. My strategic approach was to embed with the business. My first ally at the company, the first person I had a meeting with, which was with the HR person. Meeting with them, defining our corporate culture, leading into change management. How are we going to build upon this? How am I going to get people that have been working for the company longer than I've been alive to change what they've been doing? So I went straight with HR. To this day, we continue to figure out the correct path and journey on how to evolve that. And then again, it's in bed with the business. I can't rely on the business to know what IT does, but I can rely on myself and my team to know what the business does. So we literally have shadowed users. I've fought to get at the executive board table, so my voice is being heard when we're trying to push out new technologies, because I feel like I have the pulse and the ear to the ground of what our actual users are looking at. I've even spent an entire summer sitting in the lobby of every single one of our buildings to listen to what our tenants have to say. And then getting that feedback and taking that back to the business. If I bring on someone new to my team, there are specific people that they're sitting at, shadowing them for the first couple months so that we know the business. From there, the moment we see new technologies that come up on these PowerPoints, we're able to push them, implement them, and then continue to change and evolve them as we continue to hear back our feedback from our users. So for me, it's people, process, technology. No, it's people, people, people. I can deliver on time, under budget, meet all requirements, but if that end user is not using that product and going back to their clipboard or Excel spreadsheet, it really makes no sense.
So it's really more about the change management and organizational culture.
Culture, and what I think what's nice is HR, I'm finally showing the benefits of everything that we're doing, and then we'll get to that later. But now even HR, when they're hiring people, they're looking for those pieces of culture, adaptability. Is this someone that's just going to come in and just enter numbers, or are they going to help our company and industry be innovative?
Very, very interesting. Patti, from your point of view?
I think for us, coming from the banking industry, which is maybe not as fast moving and ever changing as some new organizations, it's really trying to get our leadership, especially within IT even, to adopt Agile. So I really believe that that's a core principle to us even having the ability to be having this discussion today about digital transformation. That was a movement that took a couple of years, I think, to even gain some traction. And what we see now is our business actually sit alongside of us in Agile rooms and the projects that we work on. So product owners and testers from the business analysts are embedded within our IT groups. And I think that's created quite a success factor for us in that we're sharing ideas, we fail fast. So we do demos every 2 weeks. We look at the new technologies that we're trying to digitize for them. And we have had some failures, but we also embrace the failure previous to a waterfall approach where the failure would come about 6 months after. You may have burned $1 million. In this case, it's quite quick, and we actually embrace that and almost kind of cheer once in a while when you do have a failure because you catch it quickly. So for us, it's been that, again, the behavior change as well. Our CIO would now, just recently, the last time we had a meeting, likes to say that, previously we were a mortgage bank. Now we're just a technology company that happens to deliver mortgages. So we've really started to get the whole organization is embracing digital, Agile, and that collaboration has truly paid off.
That's very interesting. Bill, from your point of view, maybe commenting on Agile as an underpinning to this. How do you view Agile development as?
Well, to reinforce what Patti and Brian are saying, Agile is very much a culture. It's a state of mind. There are tools to help you accommodate that. I would just emphasize that Agile, the ability to be quick to speed and experiment and fast to failure and a lot of other things are part of the culture that I think both of them were referencing as they were talking about the important thing that they've been experiencing. I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I'm tying it back to his question about agility. It's like thriving IT organizations are agile organizations, universally.
Do you have any issues with your end users keeping up with constantly throwing new things at them all the time?
We've tried to take an approach where we don't do releases necessarily, every 3 or 4 weeks, but rather try to do larger scale implementations into production. So we haven't had too much issue with that. Where I think we have seen the issue unfortunately, is some really good IT developers. And I think moving to an agile environment and really trying to digitize your business, you've got some great developers that just can't make it. And what I mean by that is, it is that monumental shift that they have to sit in a room now, and they're collaborating with other folks, and they may not want to step up, and they like to go in the corner and code, some of those folks. So we've seen some loss there, but at the same time, we've also seen kind of a new generation of business savvy tech developers coming in that can really prototype and kind of demonstrate the value that they understand the challenges that the business is facing.
Is that something you're experiencing, Brian?
Yeah, like if I constantly threw new stuff at my users, they're gonna hide on me. So it's just, I read up and listen to Agile, and I'm like, does that just move too fast? Or again, it's just a timing perspective on how you release it. And it sounds like you have a good balance of that. So that would be my concern, is just constantly all these new things. And I've changed my company's landscape. I think there isn't anything that existed there since I started there. And if I went too fast, I think I would lose my users a bit. And that's always that, you always have to have that pulse on what they're thinking, and no, here's Brian again, what is he gonna do now?
I think that's the power of embedding the business within your Agile teams, including trainers and HR perhaps to an extent.
You find your champions and help, hopefully they're leading and also just expanding your thoughts and out into your user community.
Absolutely, more of a self-directed approach with the team.
I want to just add some words, and the word I want to introduce here or emphasize is this concept of integration. The words you were using, we watch these line of business spending controlling the percentage of spend on technologies, and it was just going up and up and up and up. And all of a sudden, about 2 years ago, it peaked and it's been going down. And you think, what happened? Why is all of a sudden IT stepping up to more responsibility around spending? And it goes to reinforce what you both were saying. You don't just walk in and constantly allow the line of business, not allow, they don't allow anything. I mean, but you recognize that they're just going to go off and do a bunch of stuff. But somebody has to be responsible for integrating that stuff back into the at-scale operations. And the line of business documented that the fact they began to recognize this value coming from IT. You used the word embedding. You used, I've forgotten the word now, but it was this concept of saying, look, we've got all these innovations happening, but they're not going to work if somebody doesn't take responsibility for getting them integrated. And that's where you begin to assume a role that all of a sudden business says, I don't want to do that.
And I want the business to come to me. Those departments have way deeper pockets than I do. And let them bring the ideas, let us push it out. And we don't mind managing it or co-managing it with you. We'll be right there beside you.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Any thoughts or questions from anybody for our panelists at this point? Just, do we have a mic? We got a question down here. There we go.
This question. Told you.
He's not allowed to ask questions.
Brian, we've talked before, and you've provided some great examples of transformation. What did you find harder? Is it onboarding the customers, your tenants, to a digital platform, or was it harder to do some of the internal changes, the moving from paper to digital?
For our internal, it was easy to launch it, but it was a constant conversation with them to make sure that they were actually using it and refreshing. So if we launched an app to our sites, we'd go and do a training session. And then we'd see the numbers drop. So we'd go back and do another training session. And it was just constantly, we were able to identify our hotspot. Surprisingly, one of our initiatives on the tenant side was to go paperless and pay online, pay mobile, and through our tenant portal. And we got pushback from our tenants. They wanted to pay by check. And again, that was a learning process for me because I wasn't expecting that. I'm like, okay, mobile, most people have a computer. What I found, and again, this goes back to the people, when someone went down to pay their rent with their check, that was their routine for the day. They were having conversations, they were building relationships, so it was a challenge to try to break that. And then we're balancing it out, and we're still dealing it. We're not looking to replace anybody. We haven't replaced anybody in our company. I've wiped out, unfortunately, full departments, but all of those people have been placed in better, more empowering jobs within Greenwin, which is my intended goal across the board. But very shockingly that tenants want to pay by check and still do it, and it's because it's part of their daily routine. Some of that has to do with the age of some of our tenants, but I'm still, and this is where I'm working with HR on how do I break that habit that they have.
What about you, Patti? Are you pushing your clients, or are your clients pushing you?
I think it's probably a bit of both.
Okay.
Again, we recently in the last year have really launched out our Borrow portal to our customers. The adoption was tremendous. We didn't think that, again, we only hold a mortgage, so we're not, housing, checking accounts, banking accounts. So how often do you actually go in and look at the activity that's happening with your mortgage? But the uptake was great, and we've slowly started introducing more and more self-service functionality so that they can make a privilege payment online, et cetera. What we found the key was, though, is manage those portals by the data. So make sure you have good analytics layered over your portal so that you're making decisions based on the analytics. You will have people, certainly from the business side and even perhaps in IT, they want to manage by gut feel. So they want to make changes to the site because they think that's what a customer may want. But when you actually start analyzing the data coming back from clients, you do see that it's their behavior that should lead the trend in how you make modifications, not the old groupthink pattern that perhaps existed previously.
Yeah, my favorite line is, if you're not making a decision based on data, you're just someone with an opinion.
That's right, exactly. So true.
So speaking of that then, so Bill, you've done work over many, many years around best practices, benchmarking, KPIs. What are your thoughts around key benchmarks or KPIs and how that has evolved as it relates to the customer experience?
This is a passion of mine right now. Within the company, I've inherited the responsibility for metrics for digital transformation and been on a lot of committees lately. And it means something different in every part of the world. What works in the United States isn't working in China. There's unique nuances about metrics in Canada that are very different from Western Europe. And so what was interesting is, and I was having a conversation with Rooney in the bus on the way up about metrics. All of a sudden, our inquiries on metrics were increased by 800% in the last 2 years. You begin to go, what's happening here? And to reinforce what you're saying, the metrics that matter, the metrics that are of importance are the ones that are tied to business outcomes. Because who is your customer? Your customer are these people that are making business decisions. If your metrics are focused on traditional IT capabilities associated with performance and reliability and uptime, and nobody cares, unfortunately. They just want the water, they want the electricity. Don't tell me how it needs to get here or what the distribution channel is. I just want to be able to do this. So the emphasis has emerged because of digital transformation is, what are the metrics that my business cares about? I need to tie whatever I do to that business metric, that business outcome. And then I can demonstrate my value. And then it's easy to see whether my project or my product or whatever I'm doing is going to be successful. You guys are nodding your heads, so I'm just saying, if you're going to change behavior, you have to step back and look at what you're measuring your organization by. And again, I said rules have changed. The rules of the game are, if you're not connected to a business outcome, you're not going to be successful with DX. End of discussion. That is a necessity.
So Brian and Pat, do you actually tie your staff to business outcome metrics?
Yes.
So you actually have that?
We do.
I
Within our Agile teams, all of their annual bonuses, et cetera, any of their incentives are based on the team's success on implementing, again, what was joint between the business and IT that we were going to launch for that year.
We're very informal. We don't do that. We try to look at, and it's tough to measure, employee satisfaction, tenant satisfaction, ownership satisfaction. So again, we're leveraging surveys, but we're not looking at any, do I have to reach a certain number? We're just, we don't have anything very formal like that.
Right. Do we have other comments or questions around those topics from anybody? All right.
Oh, there's one over here.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry.
I'm hidden behind the fern, sorry. And this is probably maybe for Patti, but if Brian could also pitch in. How do you explain Agile to a CEO who are very used to they're used to being hearing, it'll cost so much and it'll be done in this much time. Whereas I think the reality of this changing world is it'll be done when it's done, and it's more about incremental evolution versus doing it within 3 months for $100,000. So how do you what language or what tools would you use to bring that individual around to your way, or how most I guess smaller, more agile operations would think, right?
Okay, I think that's where IT starts to play the role of salesperson. Again, it took a while. We liked the words, everybody likes the words agile, but when it came down in concept to start rolling out those first business cases where I went forward with, well, I have no budget and I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I think we might accomplish something. So that took a while to start to refine that a little bit for our business groups. So what we do and we continue to do is during the inception phase, we will ask for a budgetary value for about 3 months to really start to dig into what is it I'm trying to build. If it's a new web application, give me some time in my IT time to go through that phase with the business and prototype. And we've really found the power in prototyping. If I can show you a Bora portal that I have built or some type of web application that the business can look and feel and touch, you tend to get the buy-in for the next piece of coding. And actually at that time, they might come up with some subtle changes, but I've found that that's really been our key to buying in. We still have a board of directors to report to, and they're not overly, I think, comfortable with that open-ended budget. I think that's an ongoing debate, but it really does come down in our organization, certainly. It's about trust. And when business and IT are engaged together, it's not just IT trying to get the project approved, and that may prove no value. So we're constantly checking back with each other. A lot of emphasis on steering committees. We have a digital practice committee. So we're all continuing to kind of keep each other up to date and a lot of transparency. So I think it's just that honesty and kind of that sales approach to prove it, and they will allow that next expenditure to come. That's what's been successful for us.
Ryan, any?
No, I think you said it perfectly.
Yeah.
I'd like to add one thing that's unique to the Agile environment that I think is starting to surface as a significant requirement within the DX initiatives. And that's the concept of, in Agile, it's called product owner, but it's basically product management versus project management. IT has for years been focused on project management. I'm going to get this thing delivered and it's on time, but there's no accountability or responsibility that that thing that you delivered actually does what it was supposed to do and promised to do. And a very significant part of the Agile culture is the fact they have a product owner that establishes accountability. And you're constantly checking back with whoever your business connection is. Are we on the right path? And how often does it happen that the business needs change in the middle of a project? And it's that product owner that is not just pushing forward to get the thing delivered. He or she is pushing forward to ensure that they deliver what it is the business person wants. That is a product management role and function, that accountability, that fiscal responsibility, that every organization, when you move into auto manufacturing or financial services or any kind of thing that's delivering a product, they have product managers, high tech. And that, I think, is a significant, just to reinforce what Patti was saying, that role and the change that dictates is the fact somebody's going to be responsible for the fact the business is going to get what they want, which is how you phrased it. And there's an individual in Agile called product owner. And that whole thing is starting to move over to the thriving organizations we see succeeding with DX, is they're doing product management instead of project management. I think that's a significant and important distinguish.
I think just to add to that, we've also found our product owners are assigning points, so similar to developers that would assign a point value to the development of stories, the product owners are assigning a business value to each of those stories. So that throughout even the 2-week iterations or what have you, the business is the one saying, I am achieving this value. So it's an easier look back for your board and other members to kind of track the project as it's going prior to a massive implementation. The other benefit that we have seen with the adoption of product owners is we're now in a position that I'm actually reducing my headcount in IT management. So traditionally I would need an IT manager to be overseeing the business relationship and get all of the, what does the business want to do and what's in the forecast for them, because we have multiple business units that we support. We no longer really need that role because that's being done by the product owner within the Agile team, and with self-directed Agile teams, once they get to a state of maturity, they truly are self-directed under a team lead and a product owner. And it's amazing to watch them, kind of develop their own working relationship, call each other out, and achieve success together.
So real culture change required inside IT in terms of selling, new ways of organizing. So difficult job, but that seems to be the message here, that if you're going to sell your leadership, your CEO, the board, et cetera, you're going to need it.
Well, they understand product management. They've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
You don't introduce a financial product without a product manager.
Yeah.
They understand that. Oh, you've got somebody responsible for this? Oh, and it's not a project management. I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry.
Other questions around that? Okay. So let's just change gears a little bit. Tony talked about security and privacy, and Jonathan obviously raised that issue as well, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that during the conference. So just talk a little bit about security and privacy and how those concerns manifest themselves as you move forward in this DX world, and how your organization is addressing that. Patti, if you want to start.
I think for us, a few things internally we attempt to do, and that's bring in our security team. They are also a member of our Agile teams. They may not sit with them every day, but they're certainly involved when we're going through the planning phase, so that they're seeing what we're developing and we can expose gaps that way. We also, and I'm only going to say this because this never has happened before, but we actually invite our internal audit department in to our Agile teams, which is normally IT does not like audit around at all. They're able to start doing some testing for us as well to see early on some secure coding standards that we've started to implement. But I would say we're probably not on that leading edge of adoption of security practices, and in big part, it's you don't know what's coming down the pipe. The minute that we find out there could be issues out there, we've got our teams doing all the research. So again, just kind of the secure coding standards, keep your security team internally close to you, and we kind of are managing as we go.
Yeah. Now, I think Tony mentioned that security and privacy was one of those, if it was number one or two priorities as we go into next year. How big of a priority is it for you and your team?
I would suggest it is that number one or two, and I think for a lot of organizations, it's that feeling. It's not a matter of if, it's when something may happen, and how quick can we respond? What's diagnostic tools can we put in place today to manage for that? But again, we do lean on a lot of third parties to assist with that. So there's areas that we as a company, I will not build my own giant security platform. I will look to partners to help assist with that.
What about you, Brian? What approach are you taking to this?
Again, I like these terms. My new one is baked in. Security needs to be baked in at all aspects. Funny enough, I've just recently implemented, you don't get an account on our network until you've gone through our HR cybersecurity training. So you're getting training on WMIS, harassment, cybersecurity is a piece now added to that. I live I'm venturing into this IoT world, and you read like Reaper right now is literally just organizing its army of IoT devices before we're thinking it's gonna be a DDoS attack against the internet again, similar to the recent one. And my questions to these vendors are you pen testing? Are you thinking about any of this? It's definitely a balance between security and innovation. I like the idea of auditors. Have everybody at the table. So that way it's true transparency. You have your auditors, you have the security team, you have your teams. Have them all have their voice, have them there at the start, so it's not an afterthought. There's nothing worse than developing a product and, oh my, we have all these holes in it. We can't be Microsoft and release products and then patches later. We need everything right at the start. So it needs to be topic of conversation number one For me, it's not so much data, it's operations. If our operations goes down, someone gets locked in an elevator, someone compromises our heating system, and they're either decreasing or increasing the heat beyond a comfortable, like that's going to have a huge impact. And then that filters down to reputation. So I have it number one on our list, and first questions are, can I see some audits? Have you done pen testing? Show me the documentation, the standards, certifications that you guys are looking at.
Bill, from your point of view, in terms of
I
best
just want to
practice,
reinforce, these were two great answers. And Brian talked about being baked in. I referenced the fact that it's managing risk. It's not protecting my infrastructure. And both of the things you went through were talking about managing a business risk through the use of the stuff. That's the better perspective. And it's a different perspective than we were at 3 or 4 years ago. They just said it really nicely.
So Jonathan talked about sort of that, AI as security being a great use case for AI layering on top of that. What are your thoughts on the most likely early use case for your organization where you're going to embrace AI? Is it going to be security? Is it in some other aspect of your business?
I think we're starting to look at it now in terms of customer retention.
Okay.
Again, what does that mean? Why is our book churning? Why are customers leaving us? Did another broker come and kind of sweep them up out of our environment? Are our rates not competitive? Are they moving? So I think we're looking at it from an ROI perspective, retaining our customer base.
Okay.
Initially, I think that's the easiest, again, trying to walk in partnership with the business. They'll get the most feedback and benefit from that type of approach first for us.
Interesting.
We're looking at it in multiple aspects. I've always questioned in our industry why we just approve someone on being a tenant based on their credit score. I recently was with a startup, and they were looking at the distance between the person's workplace and where our building was, how much gas they were spending, what their previous history was at previous tenants, and building this profile with algorithms behind it to better identify, is this tenant going to stay with us, or are they going to cut out on their rent and just continue to add to that. From a building perspective, we're having all these intelligence devices, so if we can collaborate all this information and leverage it to make better decisions or improvements. If the weather, I think, is a great example. If we know there's going to be a heat wave or a storm, and our buildings are tapped into the weather systems and irrigation systems, we can proactively adjust heat or temperature or air conditioning based on that, so we're easing up on the grid and not having such high consumptions, and just that talking back and forth.
Yeah.
We're looking at it at all different levels. From rent perspective, I've always joked, or I've always been concerned that, we only set one price. Well, let's factor in supply and demand in 2 bedrooms versus 1 bedrooms in different areas of the city. Toronto real estate market is insane right now. Let's leverage these algorithms and AI to get the best rent. I feel like we're leaving money on the table. So I'm going across the board.
We're going to have variable rent now?
Yeah, like real time. Like if you don't rent a building now, we're going to set it to one price, but I have 10 people in line, so we can have the ability to increase the rent because we know there's high demands, and we're showing our tenants this. If you wait till tomorrow, it's going to be this much. Hopefully the numbers are constantly going up, but we're looking at it across the board on all these different little pockets of our business.
Super interesting. So we're getting pretty close to dinner time. So maybe at this point, take a couple of more questions. Anybody? Over here.
I was just wondering, you were talking about baking in your security. So when you're talking about baking in your security, does your security report into you, or how do you regulate that?
Well, depending on the hour of the day, I am the security guy, so I wear many hats: CISO, CDO, CIO. I've basically looking to security as a service and outsource it. So I'm leveraging these strategic relationships with these vendors to have them at the table when we're bringing in devices. or looking at our servers or infrastructure, have them right at the table when we're looking at it, have the auditors also at the table. Anybody that I feel should be involved. I've even had lawyers at the table reading these contracts. Cyber security insurance seems to be a big thing now. So we're just, I think when the conversation starts, everybody's there and nobody's left out. So we all know what the big picture is and everybody can have their say. So that's the way we've approached it now.
Patti, how are
I
you?
think ours would
approaching
be a similar response to that. We do have our chief of security that, again, will come to the table during our projects and in large part outsource a lot of our security and ensure that we're doing proper pen testing, et cetera, throughout.
Bill, any comments on how you see that changing in terms of how people are organizing around that?
I'm going to be real selfish here. I just want to go back to what they were talking about a moment ago about data and cognitive. Both of them gave examples of the monetization of data and how they're using it in their business to get more money. It used to be that data and digital transformation was a competitive advantage, and it's moving. It's moving to the data monetization. And both Patti and Brian gave excellent examples. I just want to highlight, those were great data monetization examples.
I say in my industry, it's not location, location, location. It's data, data, data. It's the currency now. And I was surprised at that one stat of how low it was. I'm like, oh my God, like data, like every decision you make is based on data these days. And it's, if you haven't realized that, you're missing out. Like I know tons of examples of where companies like FedEx or hotels like the Fairmont are leveraging data to save money, increase costs, and just create business efficiencies.
So speaking around that, so I hear all the time that it's hard to find data scientists, that it's a skill set that's in short supply, they're expensive, they're hard to keep. How do you approach that then? Where do you find data scientists for your organization?
Again, I go back to my vendors. I think I live in I guess a small vendor world where there's one big property management company, and I rely on them and their data scientists. And again, they don't see me once a month to pay the bill. They see me on a daily basis where we're creating our strategic partnership, we're sharing each other's vision, and they're leveraging me, and then I'm leveraging them because we're both moving forward in this industry. So I have a small IT footprint team. We have 100+ sites. I can't have a team of 20, 30 people, but I can have a whole group of vendors that are at the table, know exactly the direction we're going in, they have my data in their data centers, and they're leveraging it with all their other customers. So that's the way I see it, is just continue to reach out to them.
I think for us too, the key is knowing what data you want to leverage. Those of you who've probably been through the CRM adoption many years ago, we had so much data that we went to that no one knew what to do with it. So that's wonderful. You have, you know exactly, the age of your customers and which segments, but what are you doing with it? So I think for us, it's that we're probably a little slower in the adoption of full-on data mining scientists because we have still some rather large monolithic systems that it makes it difficult to get data from 5 different sources, do the mashup. That's all part of our digital transformation will hopefully get us there, but we know it will get us there. But I think, again, that the key is knowing what data you want to mine and what you'll do with it is key, or else you're just in that never-ending, mire of data. And what do you do with it?
Excellent. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that just adds to, we've talked about Agile as a key component of this. We've talked about transparency, involving and working with the business. Talked about, so Brian mentioning in terms of managing those large ecosystems of partners, vendors, clients that's going to be required to execute in that environment. Any final thoughts from you, Bill, that you want to add to this before we kind of wrap it?
This has been a great conversation. I would offer that I think one of the biggest tasks, and both of them are doing it in the way they're talking about their business, is you have to market yourselves. That is not a role IT has been comfortable with for decades. But you talked about forcing, early on you were saying how you forced yourself onto the decision table. And by example, you're marketing yourself in terms of how you're positioning what it is you're doing. And IT people just say, they just have this tendency, and I love this about them. you know, I'm doing this great work, and, you know, why doesn't anybody see it? Why don't they recognize it? And unfortunately, we live in a world where you have to market yourself. And I think that's going to be a distinguishing characteristic of successful IT leaders. I throw that out.
Fantastic.